Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, here to provide you with fan takes, analysis, picks, all that good stuff. We focus a lot on the NFL, but also the NBA, the NHL, the occasional MLB story, and what's happening in sports media and the world more generally. Sometimes our takes overlap with our politics, and we are of the left. So when we talk about Kyrie Irving today, that is where we are coming from. But packed ESVN OT this Thursday. Welcome. If you are listening to this on a podcast platform, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where OT will be for the foreseeable future. YouTube.com/ESVN show. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, rate us 5 stars. Leave us a review. Tell us what we can improve on if that's the case. And like the stream if you're on YouTube here. Hello, Bradley Alsop.
Hi.
What's up?
I don't feel good.
Oh, yeah, right. You got your shot. This time, what, are you about to say good. You're hungover again?
Well, I could be a little bit of both.
Oh, my God.
But I did get my booster and my flu shot yesterday.
Do not drink after getting your booster.
Oh, I did. I sure did.
I did that one time. I did that for one of them.
A bit of other things, too.
Oh, whoa. What? You ate something bad?
No,
Oh, pot. Okay, that doesn't count.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, that doesn't count.
Get your boosters, folks. Get your flu shots.
Yeah,
flu
yes.
season.
I'm getting it next Wednesday. I'll be getting my booster and my flu shot. I feel like 3 months after having COVID is a fine time to get the
I
booster.
stretched mine out like pretty dangerously, so it's good that you're doing it in a good range, I would say. But yeah, we have an immense amount of news going on, I was just, when you said the MLB thing, I just think it's so funny that we have so many stories to get to, and we're just complete to the point where the Astros throwing a no-hitter
I know,
in the World Series
a combined no-hitter.
Did not even like really come up on our radar, given everything else going on around the NFL and the NBA.
Well, the thing is that I mean, it's not an actual no-hitter, right? So
what do you mean it's not an actual no-hitter?
Well, whatever. It's incredibly impressive. The Astros now have evened the series. I thought that they would have taken both games at home at this point, but now they've split. So.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting. Both, you know how the adage, right? Like, a series doesn't begin until a team wins away.
Right.
They've both won away now.
Right. But it at the same time it's evened out regardless. So it could go to a game 7. That could be really interesting.
That would be cool.
Yeah. But at the same time, as I've said on the show before, baseball is not my strong suit. Perhaps in the making of this program, I'm going to get more and more into this kind of stuff.
The language is, we're building the strength up. For all the coverage,
muscle memory and all that.
Exactly.
But let's start here with some of the big news out of the NBA, and then we'll transition into talking about the NFL. Kyrie Irving said that the Nets don't need a head coach, and for a moment they didn't. Well, they have Jacques Vaughn as the interim head coach for all but 2 seconds before Ime Udoka is headed to be the next head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not sure I would take that job if I were him, but at the same time, you can also understand the immense talent that you're working with, but then you have to deal with what Steve Nash has been dealing with, which includes Kyrie Irving refusing to get vaccinated, James Harden getting traded there, then that falling apart. Now you have this whole Ben Simmons situation.
I mean, I guess what you could potentially say is if the reports are true that Ime Udoka becomes the Nets coach, you wonder then maybe he's just thinking, listen, I already have the shroud of controversy on me already. Why not heap a little bit more on?
Might as well quadruple down.
Yeah, it might just become indistinguishable at that point. Maybe people will forget about my indiscretions on the Celtics if I just go to the Nets and have Kyrie Irving as the focal point of the conversation for the team that I coach now. But yeah, it seems like one of two. It seems two things are happening here, which I find kind of interesting. Which is that, I I think Steve Nash was. I think this was kind of merciful for Steve Nash because, frankly,
who knows if he resigned? By the way, because he was walking off
there
the
were reports
court,
that the
kicking
firing
stuff or throwing things. He was
right.
He
Reports
looked
that the firing
so
was
miserable,
mutual. And
yeah,
I'm not sure how a firing can be mutual, but okay. And you're right, exactly. When he got ejected from that Bucks game, he threw something when he was leaving. He seemed absolutely enraged. I've never seen Steve Nash like that in his 20 plus years of being a public figure. But I think this was merciful for Steve Nash because,
yes.
one, he is a legendary Hall of Fame NBA player already. He does not need the money, the relevance, or the exposure. And now, as that person, he can do literally whatever he wants for the rest of his life and not have to answer questions like, have you seen the movie that Kyrie Irving was promoting on his Twitter? Are you familiar with the Black Israelite movement? Now Steve Nash can just go home and hang out with his kids in California and watch soccer if he wants to.
Yeah, and now that book is at least #1 on Amazon in multiple categories, as promoted by Kyrie Irving, and we'll get to Irving in a second. But I do feel bad for Steve Nash. As Knicks fans, he is our honorary uncle because he is RJ Barrett's. So, godfather or something.
Oh, yes, right.
But,
oh my God, I always forget about that.
Yeah, so RJ was in a press conference speaking about wishing him well and stuff like that. So, by the transitive property, I appreciate Steve Nash as part of our Knicks fam. But I just Kevin Durant was openly telling people he wanted him fired in the offseason. And it was like that Russell Wilson thing where he doesn't want to be traded from the Seahawks. But if he did want to be traded, these are the 4 teams that he would go to. You have plausible deniability in the public eye that you haven't said something, but you're clearly openly saying things behind the scenes. And I don't know how that relationship worked out. I mean, obviously he's their best player, but that's controversy not just from one guy. That's Durant being shady and mercurial in his own way. And then you have Kyrie Irving stirring up controversy with anti-Semitism, and then Ben Simmons and that contract and him not producing, and it's just too much.
Well, the other thing I was going to say is which is what you're getting at is Steve Nash to me was not the problem with the Brooklyn Nets at its current moment.
Of course not, but we also will never know if he's a good coach unless he coaches again.
But being a good coach, I don't even think is really the consideration here.
Yeah.
The in the sense that I agree with you. I don't necessarily.
No one could succeed in this.
It's hard.
Pop could succeed in this.
He was handed a very, very difficult, perilous and kind of turbulent situation to begin with, and he's had no prior coaching experience. It's very hard to determine whether he was ever a good coach, especially when his 2-star players in different interviews said he basically doesn't coach. We coach.
Right.
Or could coach.
Yeah. So, Kyrie Irving said it ahead of the bubble. Right. We don't need a coach. Okay. Well.
So the reason I say that though is what the problem is, and the guys on the inside the NBA show on TNT, both Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal made this point is. Everyone in the conversation on the Brooklyn Nets in the locker room and in the press corps, all of the conversations that are basically going on right now, or at least most of them, are not about basketball.
No
one's talking about the Nets playing basketball because everything is revolving around whether Kyrie Irving is an anti-Semite. Are the Orlando Magic having this problem?
No.
Are the Charlotte Hornets? I mean, they had the Miles Bridges thing in the offseason, but at current. Are
the New York Knicks having this problem? I mean, the Nets are such a small market team compared to the spotlight on, say, the Knicks or the Lakers. I mean, they do play in New York, but the media apparatus around them is nothing like, or the Celtics, like what you see in these bigger markets. And still, just because of the star power, that's the amount of pressure that this has created. Imagine if this was on the Knicks. I mean,
no, Twitter would be a 24-hour hit parade.
Oh yeah, it's and I remain grateful that did not work out for us. So at the time, I remember, I was pretty despondent, and my boyfriend was like, "I actually think this is a blessing in disguise for us." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he ended up being right. But
that's my main point. Besides thinking that Nash actually probably ended up, faring a little bit better than anyone who's going to eventually take this job, is that until this has any sort of actual resolution, and at this point, I don't even know how that would be possible, because another thing Charles said on Inside the NBA, which I think is also ringing true, is that anything they do now, which is, Kyrie releasing that statement where there was no real apology there in the written statement, but from him and Joseph Tsai, and also the owner of the team, and also he said that not everything in that movie reflects what he believes, so he still didn't fully condemn the movie that he was promoting, and that they said that they're now going to donate to, Jewish organizations and things like that. This is way after the fact. This is
well, let's turn to that then, because we should play what Kyrie
right, and
it's not as if
it's not as if the foot in the mouth has come out either.
Oh no, no. So as Bradley said, Kyrie Irving and Joseph Tsai and the Nets organization, in partnership with the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, announced that they were donating a sum of money to causes to bring awareness and yada, 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 yada. It's like the most obvious PR exercise that I've seen. And you know why I know this? Is because today, Kyrie Irving comes out in front of a mic, is asked directly about anti-Semitism. He can't give a straight answer, but the really key element of this answer is at the very end.
Do you have any anti-Semitic beliefs? Again, I'm going to repeat. I don't know how the label becomes justified, because you guys ask me the same questions over and over again. But this is not going to turn into a spin-around cycle, questions upon questions. I told you guys how I felt. I respect all walks of life and embrace all walks of life. That's where I sit.
I think what people want to hear, though, is just a yes or no on that question. Yes or no.
I cannot be anti-Semitic if I know where I come from. I cannot be anti-Semitic if I know where I come from.
Okay, so there you have it. That end of that answer there is Kyrie Irving saying that he still believes in the conspiracy theory that is the Black Hebrew Israelite conspiracy theory, which is that Black people are the true chosen people, as discussed in the Bible, and that they are the real Jewish people, and that Jews are not, and that they are imposters. That is the conspiracy theory that he's clearly saying he still believes in. When I know where I come from.
I also appreciate hearing in the background after he says this, and of course the way he says it, in his head he's like, checkmate. And one of the reporters says, what does that mean?
Well, he can't say.
Right.
Because it's what the movie and the book argue.
It's essentially, he's a step, it seems as if he is taking a minor step back from the second part of the DEFCON 3 tweet that Kanye West had, where he said, besides, I can't be anti-Semitic because as a Black person, I am Jew.
Yeah, right. But what does that mean then? That means that the Jews are the imposters in his estimation. And that is anti-Semitic. You are denying the existence of Jewish people, which is so foundational to understanding, like, the Holocaust and the genocide that killed millions and millions of Jews, millions of people. Are we really going to play around with this right now? And, like, again, I tried to toy with this a little bit on the show, and I didn't do Majority Report, and I didn't do so very artfully. But there is a complex relationship between different minority groups in this country. And Jewish people have a different complex relationship with white supremacy in this country than Black people do. Because in this country, Black people were enslaved. And that's what makes that dynamic so fraught and with so many different layers that are particular to, like, Americanism, right? Americanism, which is that chattel slavery, and of course chattel slavery was outside of the United States, but it lasted a lot longer here. And it was a part of, our Constitution and how the economy of an entire half of this country was formed on top of. And we fought a civil war to end slavery, chattel slavery, and the enslavement of Black people. And then we had Jim Crow. And then, like, it is such a foundational piece systemic racism is to America, particularly to black people. But when you zoom out and look at the globe, there's also that layer of mass anti-Semitism that is incredibly old and also has to be understood in tandem as opposed to in conflict. And that is what is so dangerous about the way that this is being framed by some people, which is that the Jewish people and black people don't need to be in conflict. No. Everyone's here is a victim of a white supremacist ideology and victims of, colonialism and capitalism and all of the things that combine there. And so, that is what is so frustrating about this, is that Kyrie Irving, he should know better, but we've been saying that for years now.
You make a crucial point, though, also, which is that every anti-black movement, every racist, ethno-nationalist, white supremacist movement, the Ku Klux Klan, the John Birch Society, things like organizations and things of that nature. Of course, especially when it's in regards to the Klan and and also slavers in the 19th century in the U.S. Every movement that is focused on and zeroed in on anti-blackness and either eradicating, eliminating, or subjugating black people feels and felt the exact same way about Jewish people as well.
Right.
The Klan, as much of a foundational totem as anti-blackness was for the Klan, so too was anti-Semitism. So
they're in the streets saying Jews will not replace us,
absolutely.
And they're the same guys that are as racist and anti-black as it gets.
Absolutely. So I think I completely agree with you in the sense that it's damaging in so many ways because it reflects poorly on both prongs of an anti-racist movement to try and pit two subjugated minorities against one another, as if, like you said, as if that's the conflict.
Yeah.
And that isn't.
And that is where he is a very lost soul and incredibly arrogant in the way that he responds to these things. So I don't know where this goes for him, but the idea that Steve Nash is the one that's out the door and not Kyrie Irving here just goes to show what talks, right? With that said, though, let's turn to some really interesting news out of the NFL. Snyder said never, never, never. He said he would never change the team name, the Washington football team's name. And it became the football team, then the Commanders. He said he would never sell the franchise. Well, Forbes breaks the story a few days ago. They're exploring the sale. And they try to save face in both the Forbes leak that happened before their public announcement about it and in their statement, saying, we're exploring all options. They have to kind of posture that a minority sale could be likely. But Snyder literally just had to buy out minority owners, who owned smaller pieces of the team, because he had driven the value below what they wanted to contribute to, and also the workplace culture of it all was so horrific that people wanted to distance themselves from it. And so Snyder was just kind of grasping at straws, threatening to release blackmail on the commissioner and on other owners. And then after this news breaks about the potential sale that they're exploring with Bank of America leading the charge, the entity that they've hired to conduct this, then the news breaks. Okay, here's what probably accelerated this. There's a criminal investigation into the entity. Eastern District of Virginia is opening up an investigation into financial improprieties potentially conducted by the Washington franchise. This comes after months of a House committee investigation, and they've been cooperating with the FTC on the business practices of the Washington franchise here, including withholding ticket revenue from the visiting teams, which is a part of the agreement, and under the NFL, which is like a collection of these separate corporate entities that are teams, also withholding deposits from fans on their tickets.
So he's a businessman.
Yeah,
you're
yeah, he's but of this flavor, he's particularly egregious. We're just violating the law. Another element that I think probably did him in was that he concealed some of the revenue. I think this is separate from the visiting team money because that you have to pay the visiting team that's coming some of the revenue, but also like generally you have to revenue share with the league on what you make on some games, and they were allegedly concealing what the true amount of the shareable revenue to the rest of the league. And one of the former employees testified in the congressional probe saying that the team had two books, one that was real and one that was the revenue that they were supposed to be sharing with the rest of the NFL. So that is illegal. That is financial impropriety. And if it's proven, then they could be in a really, really tough situation. So this is just like another layer of the crookedness of Daniel Snyder. And, I know he wanted to hold on to the team for his kids. Oh, how lovely. But it gets to a point where if this criminal investigation goes anywhere, he's just going to lose the team in general. And he bought it for under $1 billion right before the turn of the century. I think in 1999 he purchased the team, or 97, somewhere around that. And now it's going to be worth a lot more than that because the Denver Broncos just sold for $5 billion. I'd imagine that the Washington Commanders will sell for somewhere around that, even though, man, he has done everything he can to plummet the value of the team. But what is going to increase the value of the team, and why someone like Jeff Bezos has expressed interest, I just wish that there were more of a push for collective ownership, but literally the NFL's bylaws prevent that. That saying that we want to include another billionaire in our club. The Packers, we don't like that corporate structure. People don't get rich off of that. Go on.
No, I was just gonna say it's absolutely hilarious timing because it's not as if like we see the announcement, like you said, that he's potentially furnishing Bank of America to explore a sale, and then we're like, oh my god, great news, and we're like, wait a second. This is Dan Snyder we're talking about. This dude would never do this unless he actually had a concrete reason to get this asset off his hands.
Well, he's been clinging to it.
Right. And then immediately after the investigation is announced, essentially, it wasn't just like Tanya.
And that's
the kids.
That's outside of the personal not personal, but the NFL investigation, which is a secondary investigation.
Right. To say nothing of the other one, the league investigation.
His first investigation was internal among the Washington Commanders. That was buried. Then they got heat because there was no information to come out of it, and it was done within the Washington Commanders. So the NFL was like, okay, we're taking this on. They have a corporate investigation into it, let alone the House probe, let alone the lawsuits about misconduct within the workplace, and now there's a criminal investigation.
Are just closing in.
So it could not be worse for him, and it's completely of his own doing.
Absolutely.
And so like when I say the value of the Commanders should be less than the Broncos, I don't know if that's the case based on this one factor. One, the market's Washington D.C., so decent market. Two, they are clearly in talks with one of the two Republican governors in Maryland or Virginia, Hogan or Youngkin, right? You're better with names than me.
The Virginia governor?
Hogan and Youngkin.
Yep, and Maryland governor.
Just triple checking.
Two Republicans, yeah.
Yes, Hogan and Youngkin, who are going to be very happy to give away taxpayer money for a new stadium. Democrat might be a little less willing, although Kathy Hochul just broke the record in Buffalo, but I digress. They're going to get a sweetheart deal for whoever sells this team, because everybody in the DMV area is probably pissed at the way that Snyder has managed this franchise that once was a proud member of the Shield, and probably would have brought revenue to the states if they had been competent over the tenure of his ownership. But now that he's gone, they can excommunicate him and then give a big fat taxpayer giveaway to the billionaire that does end up buying the franchise, where they can get a shiny new stadium.
And a few weeks ago, Drew Magary on Defector mentioned this in one of his, a weekly NFL preview columns. Like, I think also the moment that Snyder lost most of his leverage is from what we were talking about a few weeks ago when that big ESPN report came out, is losing Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
You lose your only ally, and of course it is most likely, given how many off the record, sources from within ownership groups in the NFL, contributed to that piece, that essentially everyone of the owners of the teams hate Snyder, and the only one who kind of didn't was arguably the most important owner in Jerry Jones.
And who knows if he actually authentically didn't, because, well, birds of a feather, but at the same time, I guarantee you he liked having that idiot in his division who was going to beat some easy wins.
I'm sure there were a few perks to it, which, like you said, is like keep the idiot close and kind of sanction the dumb shit that he does, because, like you said, gives the Cowboys a few easy wins every year.
Yeah.
And two, it's kind of like keep your enemy close, or the devil in the sense of being like, yes, he's a maniacal, spendthrift weirdo shitbag, but at least he loves me, or at least needs me in a way.
Yeah.
And now that's kind of because, now that the chickens are more coming home to roost, and he was kind of talking shit about Jerry Jones, according to that report, I bet Jerry Jones was like, all right, I don't need you anymore. Goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, when
smell you later, Dan.
He might have heard that this dude's collecting blackmail on you.
Right.
All right. Bye-bye. Yeah. And then
my standing's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not being investigated by the league and prosecutors and the House of Representatives.
But they just quietly settled, the Cowboys did, that lawsuit by the former cheerleaders that one of the team officials was filming them in their locker room.
Right.
So who knows?
But even that's
what's in Jerry Jones's closet. So that might have freaked him out when hearing that Snyder was collecting some blackmail.
But interestingly about that too is it's funny because it's like that's also like that gets less run and less pickup in the media because there are 9 different stories about Dan Snyder.
Yeah, well, and the only reason that this is reaching this crescendo is because of the amalgamation of like circumstances there. But
anyway, can't wait for the Washington Amazons, the Washington Primes, the Washington Fulfillment Centers.
Oh God.
The Washington pee bottles.
Right. The Washington pass out on the floor.
Yeah, the Washington workplace violations.
Yeah, the Washington warehouse fires.
The Washington Pinkertons.
That's good. That should be the good.
I love that.
The next one, right?
Their uniforms are just going to be like pork pie hats and suits.
Well, it works because they have a nickname for the original name, like the Hogs. So that was one of them. Yeah, that was one of the ones they were considering.
That would work.
That'll be interesting. I mean, I'm sure that the facility will look as glossy as possible, but then you like take a peek under and it's just everyone's making $7.25 and they work 20 hours.
The tile just like it just like you like knock on the wall and it just like disintegrates.
How does that work if he also buys this team and then also owns one of the 4 primetime broadcasting slots that the NFL has?
Yeah, it seems like a real conflict of interest, but I think honestly, if the money pours in both ways, it doesn't really matter.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Yeah,
they'll be happy.
They'll be thrilled. So
we'll see. We shall see.
We shall see. But let's get into now the just some quick notes on the trade deadline. TJ Hockenson to the Minnesota Vikings. I was a little surprised that that was the decision made by the Lions. He's like a blue chip piece for them. I still think that he is underrated because because he's played on such crap teams, but he has a lot of physical gifts. He has the ability to be a top 5 tight end in this league.
And he's a great like offensive tight end too. Like,
Yeah.
he's like a decent. I think he's a decent blocker, but he's one of those guys who can like actually like run good routes, get out in space, be a threat in the red zone. So,
Yeah.
like, I think it's a good move for the Vikings because
Irv
honestly,
Smith is too one-dimensional and
Irv
way
Smith
too
and,
injury prone.
and Johnny Munt,
He's
their other
awful. Yeah.
tight end, like they're just guys who are
They'll have to extend him, but
right, and honestly. We'll obviously see about the terms if they are able to / if they do extend him, but I just think this gives them so much more of an offensive threat at tight end as opposed to just like a blocker, someone who can catch screen passes basically. Because even Munt, like who they had, and I think more so for blocking purposes, he was having trouble just like catching balls.
Yeah.
So they won't have that issue with Hockenson.
No.
So I just think it gives them more flexibility at that position to go along with Thielen and Jefferson.
yeah, I mean, but like my it's impossible for me to get excited about the Vikings when they still have the same quarterback.
No, for sure, and also all you can really hope for is that Cousins remains proficient and the line stands him up. That's the problem. Is that
Well,
and the line hasn't even been performing nearly as well as kind of we thought they would with the guys they have there.
But this is what's annoying about the Vikings is they're always, for most years, they're always competent. They just never win the Super Bowl, and that's the problem. They don't take big swings,
Right.
and they should be like throw yourself in the market for Lamar Jackson next year.
Totally.
Like, just do something.
Stockpile resources to get a quarterback. To
Yeah.
get a real
quarterback, somebody who can make plays off schedule.
Right.
That's what I want for Vikings fans.
Which Kirk cannot. Which as we said on Monday, Kirk is physically incapable of doing.
Yeah, but hey, I mean, good move in my opinion. I think the Vikings kind of win that because they also. But this is a more classic trade. And by the way, not classic in the fact that it was interdivision, which is interesting, but that the Vikings have one loss in the year and the Lions have one win. And that's what happens, right? One team sells off assets, the other one doesn't. Even though I think the Vikings are a bit of a mirage, I do think that, like, if you see that opportunity to get a foundational piece or what you feel is a foundational piece, you go for it.
And even if Kirk is not the guy next year and they upgrade a quarterback, I like that. I like that. I like the top of that depth chart for the Vikings in the sense of I like the idea of Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, KJ Osborne, and TJ Hockenson.
Yeah,
I think that's
they're going to need to move on
core.
from Thielen soon, but
and he's getting a little up there in age. But just even if they can somehow make that work where those 4 guys are still there, that's a nice 1 through 4 of pass catching options. To have essentially the best receiver in the league, a great super number 2. Osborne has shown a lot of upside for a guy who was not that heralded coming into the league, and a pass catching tight end. That's pretty good. It's just like you said, it's Kirk. Like it's just like that's their ceiling. The ceiling is the ceiling is Kirk Cousins. That's where they hit it.
Right. And so, I mean, it's just hard when, quarterbacks don't hit free agency in this league. And if you don't have the assets to acquire them, which is rare in and of itself.
Oh, absolutely.
It's difficult. And some other notes. I mean, Bradley Chubb went to the Miami Dolphins, a great move for them, and then they extended him.
So nice that they were able to hang on to him, even though he was on an expiring contract. That was our primary concern. We were like, if
his
he walks
agent
after,
wouldn't have done the deal.
Right.
His agent wouldn't have done the deal.
If he were to walk after like half a season, it wouldn't be really worth the worth the picks, worth the assets. But he's a great player, both on the blitz and in coverage. I think he'll make that defense. Ideally, a defense that has struggled a little bit more to get home on the quarterback than we expected, especially given the unit from last year was actually probably, I would say, more imposing than the offense, and I think it's kind of flipped this year.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be a great move for them down the stretch as we get into the second half of the season, especially with Tyreek had a fantastic game on Sunday.
Ooh, baby.
Waddle was back in the they're both back in the fold. Looking, the offense is back to kind of where we were seeing it in the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season. So I think. I'm appreciating that at least teams like the Dolphins aren't kind of like, oh, we had a bit of a struggle, injuries, things like that. They're kind of like, no, look, let's keep trying to win.
No, going all
let's
in.
Keep trying to win.
Greer's done a great job with the exception of the Tua pick. But no offense, sorry, but I think Justin Herbert would have they would win the Super Bowl this year if he was their quarterback, is my opinion. But just because you have more options with his arm,
agreed, totally.
Yeah, okay. But. Another just salt in the
We're
wound.
a tools
Sorry.
podcast. Everyone knows we're a tools podcast.
Yeah.
We're a tools podcast.
I mean, truly, that's what sports are. It's physical attributes. God damn it.
We get at least 2 minutes out of just being like tools.
It's just yeah. So these are the picks that the Dolphins got from the Trey Lance deal.
So yeah, this is like one of my favorite facts ever.
These are the players that they got from trading back from 3, which the Niners traded 3 picks. They were able to draft Jalen Waddle at that later pick. They then traded that other first rounder for Tyreek Hill. Then they traded that other first rounder for Bradley Chubb. Would you guys rather have Bradley Chubb, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, or Trey Lance? I know, different situation. They're just a quarterback away. Not that quarterback. Pretty clear who won that trade.
And I mean, even just from like simply reps, like it's those players in that pick in exchange for a guy who started 3 games.
You would trade those 3 picks for Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, no question, 100%, totally. There are probably like 5 guys I'd trade
Joe
those
Burrow. I would. Yes.
Yeah, especially if you're a team who needs a quarterback.
Lamar Jackson,
Lamar, Burrow, Mahomes, Allen,
maybe Herbert. But Herbert, he's.
I wouldn't say Rodgers or Brady now just by age. I just wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, and they're not playing well either.
Herbert's probably like that. Like he's like the 5-ish. But yes, that would be like my next go-to.
Yes, those top 4 though.
Probably not Hurts though. Would you trade or Dak?
No,
would you trade those picks for Hurts or Dak?
I feel like. I like Dak as a thrower better than I like Jalen Hurts as a thrower, but
Dak I probably would. I don't know about Hurts yet, though.
I still need to see more. I know that that's an unpopular take, but I like, and the problem is I love Jalen Hurts the person, but to me, they're the best team from top to bottom in the NFL. And so do I think that Dak would be better on the Eagles? I think so, maybe. I think he's a better thrower, and he's
I think. Oh my God, Dak on the Eagles. Woo! Well, Dak at his peak would be awesome on the Eagles. I think. I'm loving how Hurts is playing, but I agree.
Yeah, I just yes. So but you have that leadership factor, and we are a traits podcast, as we say, right? Tools is what you say. I say traits, and that's how we compete. But I don't know. But there is an intangible quality to how Jalen Hurts is like smarts and leadership. That I just so we'll see. They're both very very good quarterbacks. But to trade 3 first-round picks, to trade those 3 players in particular, those 4 quarterbacks are kind of all I do it for.
Yeah,
and maybe Herbert.
But so even I think the reason we even go through that exercise though is because.
Trey Lance is the point.
It just shows how much value.
Not a project quarterback who hasn't played much. You just don't do that.
Those picks.
It's bad team building. So
we talked about how great McCaffrey looked, but that doesn't it's hard. It's sometimes hard to keep both things in one's head at the same time. But like nothing. There are a few things short of winning a Super Bowl that Christian McCaffrey could accomplish for the Niners that will obviate that terrible process.
Yeah.
In terms of the pick for Lance.
And maybe they'll get to the NFC Championship game, but I'm saying it right now. I don't think with either of those 2 quarterbacks on that roster that the Niners can get to the Super Bowl. I just don't. Or win the Super Bowl. Maybe they can get there. Maybe they can surprise the Eagles if there's some injury. But right now it looks like the Eagles are on a collision course.
Oh, yeah.
to meet the Bills or whoever comes out of the AFC. Bills, Ravens, Chiefs. I can't really see the Ravens. But speaking of, like, that is a big-time move for them, getting Roquan Smith. Now they have 2 guys who don't have agents who they have to negotiate with, Roquan and Lamar Jackson, which will be very interesting.
Two sovereign citizens.
And look, I support guys making decisions for themselves, but at the same time, what I want in the short term is for these guys to get the best deals as possible and get generational wealth for their families. Because this also helps all players when players are able to negotiate the best contracts from their bosses. It doesn't matter that they're football players. This is money that they live off for the rest of their lives, and they should get as much guaranteed money as humanly possible. But that is a fascinating wrinkle to the Roquan Smith trade. But the Ravens, I mean, that was a great
What
trade.
else could we expect, right?
It just was weird that the Bears were like, I guess it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, right? They felt that Chase Claypool was an asset that they could get with a second rounder that would help them and help develop Justin Fields. But then you're also trading away your two best defensive players, kind of indicating that you're in sell mode. So they're dipping their toe in both waters here, but I can understand being infatuated by the physical talents of Chase Claypool, who has been completely underutilized in a terrible Pittsburgh Steelers offense. But who knows?
And with Fields, like combined with Fields actually probably playing like the best football of his career.
Yeah,
so far,
you want to ride
weeks.
that wave. So I understand the thinking. I'm just
It's like
wondering,
the value though, right? It's like the assets moving. Like
second round pick's a little rich, and then they're
Right,
like, well, the
right.
Packers offered a second round pick. Did they really? Like, I guarantee you that when it came down to
Oh
it,
yeah, did they?
they never would have pulled the
Were
trigger.
they part of the second round pick?
They do this. They do this to appeal to Aaron Rodgers.
I was saying it's
publicly.
Roger. It's complete Rodgers appeasement.
But then they never actually do anything. So give me a break. Like, if I hear one breathless report about how the Packers were actually in on Chase Claypool, give me a break. But Roquan Smith's a perfect fit for that defense, and they finally have a difference maker that can take some pressure off Patrick Queen, maybe some pressure off the pass rushers on that team. And they were already starting to ascend and kind of gel as a defense. And so Roquan Smith is, I mean, he's a really, really good player, and at his position, clearly top 5.
I could see that. I could see them really getting the most out of him, just in terms of where they line him up and like what he can do on the blitz, and also a little bit in coverage. Like I think it's a good move. I think, and again, I also think it's still sort of like, even given what's going on with the injuries on both sides of the ball, I think this also indicates that the Ravens are still in. They're also like, we still want to win. We still want to compete. So that's what I'm very encouraged by a lot of these moves. From the Dolphins, from the Ravens, I think they're moves that are kind of not full push all the chips into the table, but moderations of that, just that they're not giving up on these seasons or thinking we don't need to do any. We can stand pat and be fine.
Yeah.
It's nice to see, because you don't always get it with trade deadlines. I feel like it's not, there's never nearly as much movement as like the NBA trade deadline usually in the NFL with players mostly. So it's kind of nice to see.
Well, they're starting to get a little bit more
active,
modern,
right,
as a league
in terms of like team building and actually,
Yeah.
right, for sure, and again, like and how the front offices operate. So that's I'm encouraged by that too.
There were some smaller moves, like I mean, the neither disgruntled Jets receiver got traded.
Right. So Elijah Moore and
Brandon Cooks also did not get traded and was public about it. But like, dude, don't mean to be rude, but he's supposed to make a lot of money guaranteed next year, and no team's going to take that on.
It's a hard contract to want to take on.
Yeah. Zach Moss, Nyheim Hines flipped. I have no idea why the Colts traded Nyheim Hines.
And honestly, I'm a big Nyheim Hines fan. I think he's fun for what he's able to do. He's fast. He's shifty. He can catch screen passes.
I'm starting him in fantasy this week with Tony Pollard out, so on bye.
Okay. So hopefully, I don't know. I just think he could add. Every kind of like Bills piece added or Chiefs piece. I'm all in the sense of like, if Kadarius Toney going to the Chiefs, Nyheim Hines going to the Bills, like. I like moves like that for teams that are that good. I'm almost kind of just like, they're always just like cherries on top. I'm like, if they can get anything kind of like fun and unique or interesting out of those pieces on their offense, like great. That's just like another thing in the bag of tricks for these teams. So
right.
I think the Bills, knowing what they do on offense, can actually get something kind of interesting out of Nyheim Hines. Maybe honestly revitalize their run game a little bit.
Yeah, it seems like they just don't trust James Cook yet.
Which is fair. I mean, he's a rookie. It's
and McDermott's just a little old school that way. I mean,
right, not trusting. Yeah, right,
yeah. They're like. Even Dable's like this too, and it's interesting because they from the same coaching staff. But Dable, it takes time for him to get younger guys into his like circle of trust essentially. So I feel like that could be that way for James Cook, but the whole Zach Moss situation was weird. It just seems like maybe that he was a bust.
I was just gonna say it kind of just feels like he fell out of favor.
I'm surprised
he wasn't even he wasn't even getting playing time most.
He didn't look explosive on the field either when I saw him. So maybe it's just one of those instances. Hope he has a career of vitalization in Indy, but
sometimes players just need to change the scenery, but also like you said, sometimes like players just don't stick.
Yeah, I mean, I was like following his career closely because I think I like drafted him late, hoping he'd be something in fantasy, and it just never panned out. But that's that. Not a terribly interesting trade deadline, but for the NFL standards,
totally right. Like literally by NFL standards, but also that it was definitely more pieces moving than usual.
Yeah.
But then also I guess the other thing is Michael Thomas on IR now, back on the IR.
Well, let's talk about that when we get to our picks.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah. I got
that might involve that might be a part of the news of our picks. Now, all right, brag.
What was my record again? I totally forgot.
I know there's so many numbers. It's hard for you to figure it out.
I've just been winning so much. It's just hard to remember. Like, am I 3-0, 4-0, 5-0?
We pick 3 games a week, asshole. So you know what the situation is.
6-0 over 2 weeks, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good.
Put it up.
Pretty good.
All right. Well, anyway, yeah, Bradley's...
Emma's telling me to get off the screen.
Yeah, get off the screen. I don't want to see your face anymore. Bradley's doing really well, and I'm struggling. Like, I will occasionally bet small wagers on some of these games, and I am way more invested. I would rather lose the money at this point. That's not true. But I have a lot of competing interests on Sunday, but I just could not believe the Colts fumbled that bag and let the Commanders drive down the field at the end to actually do this. They actually lost that game. I mean, and I thought I was slick going head-to-head against Bradley, and I did think that the Colts had a good chance to actually win that game because I thought that, I don't know, Sam Ehlinger would provide a spark for them. But here we go. This is the results. As soon as the Ravens,
those check marks.
Yeah. The Ravens went up on Thursday Night Football, and there was no chance of the Bucs
2-0 on Thursdays
back.
too, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I usually stay
there.
away from Thursdays.
I'm
although
really playing with fire.
I thought about taking the Eagles to win by 2 touchdowns tonight, but the line scared me. And look at it, they're gonna win like 31-10 tonight or something like that. But honestly, I would consider it if I was able to redo what I already selected. But I got unlucky with the Bengals. Like, I would not have taken them if I knew Jamar Chase was out. But that's the rules.
It was also just such a screwy game. I mean, they essentially going into the half, the Browns being up 11-0, McPherson missed an extra point and a field goal. It was just like Burrow got going like in the third quarter. Essentially, he couldn't get anything going in the passing game, and then also Boyd's touchdown was off a tipped pass. Like, it was just bizarre. Like, there was just no rhyme or reason to that. Also, the Bears defense was like dominating. Obviously, I mean, it's a testament to how terrible the Bengals offensive line is, but the Browns defense has not been good. Even with Myles Garrett, the Browns defense
that's why I was shocked. Yeah.
It was really a genuinely kind of strange outcome, that specific score. It was just like,
we're back to hating Zach Taylor. We're back to despising everything about him. I mean, it is amazing how little he's able to get out of the talent that he has, and everything that is successful on that offense is because of the talent of the players.
Right? There's no scheme. It's just so uninspired. It's so unambitious, and also there are ways to shield bad protection. And they're just not doing it.
Yeah. Well, let's put up our picks for this week then, and let's just get into it here. Because I'm trying to come back. I'm trying to make a run here. And look, it's a 4-game differential. We're halfway through the season. I can easily come back when I actually think about it here. Bradley's got to cool off at some point. He's got to cool off at some point. And I'm hoping that it's this week. So I'm 11-12-1. Bradley's 15-8-1. And my first pick for this week will be The Green Bay Packers.
Oh, wait, sorry. Did we want to do our little intro thing?
Oh my God. Yes.
We want to do our little intro?
We gotta. All right, guys. These are our Week 9 locks. And thanks to my dear friend, also known as Dan from the internet, Dan Evans, just coming through without me even asking. He's just the man with a graphic and a little bit of an intro for our lock segment. Check this out. It's incredible. Thank you, Dan. ESVN
Stone Cold Lock of the Century. All week.
Thank you, Dan from the internet.
We will be playing that every week now. Our Stone Cold Locks.
Stone Cold Locks.
I couldn't get colder than me right now. Although I was 2-1 last week, 1-2 this week, but I'm just like flirting with 500 here. And again, thank you, my friend Dan. He's just such a good friend to me. You might know him from TYT days. He's also been on the Majority Report before, but great guy. That was great. So, with that said, now we will get to our picks. I got Green Bay given 3.5. Or not giving 3.5, right? My brain's not working anymore. But at -3.5 to win by at least 4 points against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Now, the Packers have burned me recently. I keep thinking they're going to come back and show some life, and that has not happened yet. But one of these teams understands that they're not making the playoffs. They just traded one of their best players in TJ Hockenson. The team's kind of falling apart. They fired their DB's coach, the Detroit Lions. And the half point scares me a little bit. But this defense is historically bad. Historically bad.
I mean, they were up like 20. They were up like 3 scores or 4 something, like 3 scores or almost 3 scores. I don't remember what the exact number was. I think they were literally up potentially 27-3 or 27 something like that against the Dolphins, and then lost 31-27. They just can't. They cannot keep
finish
a lead.
Yeah, and
they are incapable of keeping
that was
a lead.
Another 3.5 point spread that the Dolphins covered. I'm hoping that this happens again.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair assessment because I don't see much improvement coming from that Lions defense this year. Firing the DB's coach, firing Aubrey Pleasant after that performance does not give me a whole lot of confidence going into this week that they're going to improve.
And honestly, I would have a different feeling if they fired their defensive coordinator, because then the scheme changes from week to week, right? Like we saw this with Steve Wilkes, who then became the head coach and put his defense in place in Carolina, and then they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because you can take guys like by surprise like that. But they have not fired their DC. And I just think the Packers, their defense has underperformed, but they're still good. They still have solid pieces, and they are a desperate football team. And they have something to fight for. The Lions do not have something to fight for. And I just feel like this whole kind of Dan Campbell thing, despite me liking him, is falling apart a little bit. And
I don't think the
Jared Goff's regressing to the mean a little bit more.
I think it's totally fine that the culture or the passion remains, but the fact is just this team is bad.
Yeah.
This team is bad, and this team.
But when you say the culture, that's the thing, is like, yeah,
it can evaporate because they're not winning.
If you're not winning, it goes away by week 5.
Right. No, and that's a good point. And also, but I think that's the thing, is the culture or so-called culture can only last so long if you're 1-6 or whatever the case may be. So I'm with you there. I think this is, if Aaron Rodgers is going to carve a team up, he'll probably be carving up this Lions defense.
Yeah.
And we've seen some flashes from some of these receivers, these Packers receivers. Romeo Doubs had an amazing catch in the end zone last week. So, I think
hopefully they take some steps up.
Yeah,
what
absolutely.
have you got? What have you got here?
All right, so I have the Minnesota Vikings -3 against the Washington Commanders, who almost burned
you.
Almost lost me some cachet there on Sunday, but they pulled through.
Didn't happen.
They pulled through, but I'm not banking on that again. So I'm kind of taking this similar tack in the sense that I'm going the opposite way in the sense of you're kind of banking on the Lions losing a little bit of offensive juice with Hockenson off the team. I'm hoping that maybe the Vikings will have a little bit of a greater dimension on offense with Hockenson inserted into the lineup. And I understand maybe there might be a little bit of growing pains, or maybe he's not utilized that much because he'd have to learn a new playbook and things like that. But I could see him maybe having a pretty good introduction into the Vikings offense. And if the line keeps Kirk upright and he's able to get some passes to Hockenson and to Justin Jefferson, I think they can do well. And also the Commanders' defense is bad, and the whole team sucks. And I think that they're not going to put up a huge amount of fight, and they barely won that game against Indianapolis anyways. So
they got to come down to earth at some point.
I wasn't even that encouraged by them winning that game. I was only just happy that they won for my purposes. So
right.
I think the Vikings could definitely win this game by a field goal or more.
All right. Well, I could see that. I'm scared about the Commanders ever since they burned me last week.
Yeah.
But and Heineke has like this somewhat of this hold on the team, but I agree that it's going to dissipate
wild.
soon.
But and also to be fair, they won that game on like a wild, like unbelievable Terry McLaurin catch, and like that's obviously what you can get with a guy like Terry because he's just like. He's a fantastic athlete, and especially at the catch point, he's amazing. But you kind of can't rely on that,
right?
Right,
exactly. I'm with you on that. I do think the Vikings will win, and I hope that they do because the Washington Commanders are a division rival, and I want them to lose. Okay, now we got for me the Patriots. Speaking of the Colts, -5.5. In New England. I might be a little more scared of this line if it was if it were in Indianapolis, but it is in New England. Can you just verify that for me? Because
sure.
I like heard on a podcast that it was in Indy, but I think they misspoke because I'm almost positive it's in New England.
It's in New England. It's in Foxborough.
All right, yeah, I was just triple checking that. I just feel like the Colts don't really blitz much. Mac Jones has been susceptible to the blitz, but that won't be an issue.
No, they actually the Colts really have not been able to get a whole lot of pressure outside of a few, Shaq Leonard, Grover Stewart,
right? And I just feel like
DeForest Buckner.
The Patriots will have an answer for that. This is the kind of the time of the year where the Patriots start to find their groove. Ramondre Stevenson seems like a bona fide star as a running back there. Hopefully they stop kind of returning to Damian Harris, who seems like a good player, but it just does not click for me in the way that it does.
He's just not nearly as explosive, and I think
Ramondre's pass catching abilities
right,
better too.
Totally. And I think if they're going to continue to play Mac Jones, I think it takes a little bit less of the. I think it takes less of the responsibility or less of the pressure off him to have such a vibrant run game. And they were like gashing the Jets last week at will with Ramondre Stevenson. So I could definitely see a similar thing happening there with the Colts run defense not being particularly formidable.
And on the other side of the ball, we don't know if Jonathan Taylor's going to play.
Right.
And if he does, he's banged up because that ankle's been bothering him all year. That offensive line is not helping him at all. And they just traded Nyheim Hines. So we're talking Deion Jackson as their third string running. Well, now second string, I guess.
If Taylor's not playing, it's a really depleted offense.
And then you have Sam Ehlinger as the quarterback, who I feel like gives them more of a chance to win than Matt Ryan did, given his ability to make plays off schedule and scramble a little bit. But Bill Belichick is not going to be intimidated by Sam Ehlinger. And
he eats Sam Ehlinger's for lunch.
Yeah, I could see him devouring him.
I think he will. I think he may take a great pleasure in neutralizing Sam Ehlinger.
And of my three picks, I feel the least confident in this one because I could see Mac Jones throwing a pick and making this game closer than it should be. But I still feel a fair degree of confidence, at the very least, that the Patriots are going to win this game.
If Mac doesn't make some of the real mistakes that he made last week, this offense just is very capable of thrumming with like little interruptions or interference. It's really just a matter of him being the one who doesn't make the mistakes. Because this line has been playing pretty well. Stevenson has been super reliable and has been a great offensive presence for them. I think it's really just as long as Matt connects the dots and gives them the high floor that he has, they won't have a problem. It's
and
really
I almost don't even want to put it on Mac. It's like also offensive coordinator.
Well, of course, it's the scheme. It's also the scheme, right?
Senior offensive analyst assistants, like
passing game coordinator.
Just like figure it out yourselves too, and set up some good looks for Mac. So that's
do your job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh. Well said. You're just still smarting from that loss.
I'm certainly smarting
against the Jets.
Smarting would be a good way of putting it.
Or win for them against the Jets. There we go. All right. So what do you have up next, Bradley?
All right. So now I have the Atlanta Falcons +3 at the Chargers. My Super Bowl pick.
Look at
LA Chargers.
Look at that. You have picked. Oh, I thought you picked all dogs.
No, almost. I couldn't help it with the
I picked
Vikings.
all favorites though.
So
that's how you know I'm scared.
Well, the Falcons, I'm not banking anything on this defense because the Falcons defense is bad, except for basically Grady Jarrett and AJ Terrell.
And we should say for the podcast listeners, you have the Falcons +3.
Yes, Falcons +3 at the Chargers, against the Chargers.
At home.
Yes, at home. And I'm kind of surprised that they're 3-point dogs only because, one, I think this Falcons offense is so much more interesting and creative than the Chargers offense is. And I was surprised by this. I think me and you both definitely did not foresee, especially just given the talent there and the youthfulness of this offense, how much juice they have. But Arthur Smith, to his credit, is a really inspired offensive coach.
Mm-hmm.
He does a lot of really interesting stuff with a lot of different formations. So I just have more faith in this offense than I do in the Chargers offense, even coming after a bye, because like we've been saying all year, this offense just has no seasoning to it, so to speak. They're boring. They basically it's a check down Charlie offense for a guy with a rocket for an arm. It's absolutely mind-boggling and maddening to behold. So
infuriating. You know how much it pisses me off.
Oh yeah, it's absurd. It's the offense the last few weeks when it has basically been Justin Herbert checks down to Gerald Everett. Like,
and then
what the hell is that about?
Like Justin Herbert throw downfield and fit it into the tightest window imaginable because your receivers can't get separation and we can't scheme.
Yeah, it's like fit it through a closing elevator, please.
Yes.
And then also, I know the Falcons defense is bad, but I don't think the Chargers defense is much better. I don't think they've been playing all that much better. And if I'm not mistaken, is JC Jackson's hurt, right? Or am I?
Yeah. He's out for the year.
So they don't have J.C. Jackson anymore. I don't feel super confident in their run defense, even relative to last year when they were terrible on the run against the run. And I don't feel really super confident with this corner group without Jackson playing. So
and also no Mike Williams talking about their receiving.
And no Mike Williams. I mean that's no Mike Williams already. We know we don't have Keenan Allen. So it was a depleted group of receivers to begin with, and without Mike Williams, I feel bad for Herbert because it's not even his fault that he's neutralized like this. It's the scheme of the offense and it's the personnel. So I'm not confident that they're gonna be able to get a lot going because they haven't been able to get a lot going against some bad defenses in the past.
Hot take. Maybe Justin Herbert is the first of these quarterbacks drafted to force his way to the open market.
I would be understandable for a lot of reasons. The scheme, the personnel, the fans, frankly. And not to say
the organization.
Right, not to say anything about, I feel for them, but this team moved from San Diego where they had an ardent, vibrant fan base to be the second fiddle of a town that is not a football town.
No. And we know from experience that the Chargers don't necessarily always have the cash on hand to make certain things happen.
Absolutely.
Certain contracts. So
if I'm him, I think that's a fair point. I think it's
I would
totally
hope
a fair
that
point.
I hope he does because this is they're wasting his talents.
I just can't wait for him to be a Jet, you know?
Well, Gettleman wanted him, but he decided to go back
Justin
for
Herbert for
year.
Justin Herbert for Zach Wilson. Who says no?
I mean, are you joking?
Who says
no? Of course, no one says no.
Well, maybe the Chargers say no.
Well, yeah, right. That's all that matters. And they can franchise tag him, and then they can franchise tag him again. But at the same time, if your quarterback doesn't want to play for you, it's just like, does he have the personality to actually do that?
Yeah, that's the thing, though.
He's so easygoing.
Or will he be just like, I'm for the team, so I won't do it.
Yeah. So, all right, my final pick here, and this is probably the one I feel best about, is the Baltimore Ravens -2.5. Now, I understand that the Saints are scary. They're also a desperate team, and that's not that's actually not true because they won last week. But they have the talent to be at the top of this division, which is probably, besides the AFC South, the NFC South is the worst in football. So, they have an opportunity here, but I just don't think they'll be able to take it. And I think Baltimore will win by at least a field goal because I think it's going to be the Roquan Smith coming out party.
I also think the Ravens' offense looked pretty good
without Mark Andrews and without Rashad Bateman, who's now out for the year. Mark Andrews probably won't play, it seems like, but Isaiah likely looked good.
He looked good. Duvernay's honestly showing me this. I thought it might have been a flash in the pan week 1 against the Jets with his 2 touchdowns. He's been playing pretty consistently well for the first half of the season. I'm very pleasantly surprised about him developing from just a special team / kick return, punt return guy to being an actually kind of a reliable receiver for Lamar. He's not amazing, necessarily, but he's a good option. He's a good mid-tier option for Lamar.
And the thing is everyone. There's always this. There's the reason that they get such good tight end looks too is because there's always a linebacker spy on Lamar.
Totally. Who's kind of waiting to see what he does. Does he run? Does he actually throw? There's always a guy not keying the tight end,
Right. And that's why likely will have, I think, more some success even as a rookie playing this role with Mark Andrews out. Is just because the looks that the tight ends get and the fact that they're on the field so often. Bless you. The fact that they're on the field so often just gives them more of an opportunity. I just think Lamar is going to play well. The New Orleans defense has not been anything really to write home about. Weather won't be an issue in the dome. So I just feel like that's the line that stuck out to me the most.
I'm also even though the Saints won, I'm still not I'm out on the Saints team.
Well,
I'm pretty firm.
What's odd is that their defense is what's the issue.
Which is so rarely the case, right?
Outside of I know that Dalton threw those 2 terrible back-to-back pick sixes, which lost that game. But
that was fucking insane.
It made me so mad. But I believe I had bet on the Saints. I believe I had bet on the Saints at that game. I can't even remember. But
I picked the Cardinals, right?
No, that's why I was invested.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, why was I mad about that? But the Saints also are coming down after blowing out the Raiders, and I always feel like after those big blowout games, there's a bit of a feeling yourself, and then you're facing an opponent like the Ravens, and it's like, okay, you're gonna get smacked in the mouth.
Right.
Michael Thomas is on IR again.
Exactly.
And
they're already depleted at receiver.
But my point is just Andy Dalton has looked good, honestly, for the most part, and
to his great credit,
kept
honestly,
Jameis Winston off the field, and
right.
They just needed a stabilizing veteran presence on that offense. I feel like since
that's Andy Dalton to a T.
Yeah, whose hair and beard is just phenomenal. I mean, really, just good job.
God.
Good job, dude. You're rocking it.
The shock of red hair.
But it's the red hair and on the face, right? You don't see it. It's flowing. So good job, Andy Dalton. But I do think you're going to lose
nothing else
on Monday Night Football.
The hair.
Mm-hmm.
If nothing else, the hair is looking good.
Yeah.
The lettuce is out there.
And he's living his best life. He's moving from team to team, making some backup quarterback money. And he's one of the best backup quarterbacks in football. So I like the Saints, but I still feel like the Ravens win this one.
And I totally agree with you in the sense that a punch in the mouth team is kind of the Ravens just by how they're coached. You're just not really, even if they lose, you're just not really going to catch them asleep.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's just rare.
Right.
Like, they're always going to be competitive, even if it's like an off game. So I totally see it.
Yeah.
And then for me, the last one is the Seahawks +2 against the Cardinals. I am frankly astonished that the Seahawks are underdogs in this game.
Mm-hmm. That makes no sense.
Especially giving 2. I can't believe it, because I just don't know. Are the odds makers at DraftKings watching a different Cardinals team than I am?
But it's bizarre because, like,
the Cardinals are bad, are actively bad.
The thing about it though is that 1.5 is usually like home field. So if you see a 1.5 point spread, it's like on a neutral field, it would be a pick 'em. But they're saying that the Cardinals are half a point better than the Seahawks?
Which I'm not even thinking that's the case with DeAndre Hopkins back. Obviously, I think that's an enormous help. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins, since he's been back, has looked phenomenal. But he is one guy on a team that's the offense is mostly dysfunctional and with a not great defense either. And Hollywood Brown is out. So and also against against an offense that has been, for what it is, firing on all cylinders with Geno Smith behind center. And yes, the defense is terrible for the most part, but they've been playing better every week. They're getting closer and closer to the middle of the pack in terms of EPA per play on defense and DVOA. So I'm saying, my thinking is with a combination of one of the better offenses in the league right now with Seattle, one of the better quarterbacks playing the league with Geno Smith, and a middling defense, I'm taking them over the family drama that is the Kyler Murray Cliff Kingsbury show, where every 5 snaps Kyler's coming off the field to, I don't know, scream at his head coach at the top of his lungs while his
that happened one time.
While his head coach vacantly stares at him.
Well, that happens every time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I agree. I know having Hopkins back is huge, and he's still absolutely, despite his age, despite the despite his health, he's looking great, and I'm so happy to see it. I mean, he's one of my favorite players to watch when healthy, and he truly always elevates any team that he's on, no matter how bad they are. But I'm more just thinking, I don't see the team rising to that, even if Hopkins does.
Right. Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, those are our picks then. Godspeed to us both. We'll read some IMs and then we'll give our picks for tonight.
Just imagining the green checks next to my picks.
God, I don't like this side of you.
This is gonna be clipped when I go 0-3 this week.
I mean, from your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah, truly.
Professional dumpster fire. We'll read some IMs and then we'll give our picks for tonight and get out of here. Bezos buying the Commanders. I guess we really are in hell. I guess the franchise is trading one incredibly stingy owner for another. The thing is, like, it's really not hard to make money in the NFL. Like, if you just put in a minimal amount of investment. And I'll be real, Bezos is going to give a lot more investment in this team. It means nothing to him. It means nothing to him. So I don't think he will be stingy. I think he's a psychopath, but I don't think he will be stingy. Left-wing Limbaugh. I, for one, am happy for Nash. He can go back to his passion, cringe TikTok content.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can like dance with his kids. Like.
Right. Exactly. Typical PR move. Emma, just curious, did you get to watch Waz from TYT give his nuanced and really good take on why black people are so confused about how the anti-Semitism tag works? He was not at all defending Irving or Kanye, but he gave a black man's perspective about how black people are flummoxed when they see Jews are oppressed, but they're at the top of the economic food chain while they are oppressed and at the bottom. I did not see that, but that I think are some of the thoughts of, like, maybe why I was struggling to... Those are some of the... It's hard sometimes to be like black people, like you know, you're susceptible to this racist trope when black people in this country have been the most at the front lines of victims of racism in this country. But you can do both. You can acknowledge that and call that out, and that's what I tried to do a little bit earlier.
It's also the duality sometimes of you know, the difficulties surrounding certain conversations where there are like PMC white folks who are like, no, you don't understand, conservative black voter. Like, you are systematically oppressed.
Right.
Like don't you get it? Even though some of the people in those voting blocks are far more conservative and far more and have different value systems and different value propositions and certain things. Like, it's hard to sometimes square that circle when there are certain, upper class or higher class in terms of socioeconomic white folks who are much more have much more, divergent views on racism and how racism affects society than some working class black voters or older black voters who are like, I want cops in my neighborhood.
Yeah. Right.
I don't want the police defunded.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about crime and immigration.
Yeah.
They'd be like, no, you shouldn't be. Like, have you don't you know about systemic racism? Like, there are these like discussions like what I'm sure was discussing in that way, and what you were kind of alluding to on MRN today. I think it kind of squares a little bit with that too, where it's like that doesn't always. It does, just because that's there doesn't always mean it coheres exactly to the people themselves who might be experiencing it.
Totally. That's like exactly what I was thinking. Well said. Drew from Vegas says home field's usually 2.5 points at least. Drew, I thought that changed because home field has basically not mattered that much in recent years. But I could be wrong. Drew from Vegas, what's your favorite sports stat ever? Here's mine. Larry Fitzgerald has more tackles than drops in his career. Whew, that's a good one.
That is a good one.
I mean, I used to use Aaron Rodgers' being touchdown to interception ratio being like so much higher than literally any other quarterback that's ever played to my advantage. But, my Aaron Rodgers agenda is a bit stymied now that he's annoying and anti-vax. But I told you, I've been playing that bar trivia thing about, whether the 4 teams have never been to a Super Bowl before. I use that just to start conversations sometimes. And the answer is the Lions, the Jaguars, the Texans, and this iteration of the Browns. But I guess the Browns in general, because they won an NFL championship, but not a Super Bowl. Not a Super Bowl.
This one isn't even that interesting, but I always think it's kind of crazy is that Larry Bird has won MVP, Coach of the Year, and Executive of the Year. So he'll get at every facet of the game, the NBA writ large. He has had some sort of success in a season that was the peak of or at least for the voters.
Steve Kerr needs to become a
GM again.
GM, and so then he can write. The Emo Dragon, Emma, what do you think of the Hockenson trade to Minnesota? Look earlier in the episode to hear my thoughts on that. And the final IM of the day, Antifa Lockhart, this weekend it's time. All deep threats, all game. Miami Dolphins versus the Chicago Bears of Arlington Heights. Justin Fields, 10 out of 10 smoke show. Going for 4 straight 200-yard rushing games versus Tua. Heave it. Let the points rain down. We'll see. I don't have a ton of faith in Chicago in that game, but it is in Chicago. Maybe if there's weather, I would change my opinion.
If Fields can slip and slide his way down the field like he did the first week against the Niners,
and Antifa Lockhart's making fun of me for saying Justin Fields was handsome. Right. It's more just whatever. I was really commenting on just his physical attributes because it just looks like an amazing athlete, but also, yes, handsome as well.
He's a cutie.
He's a cutie. All right, guys. Thank you so much. ESVN OT. Hope you enjoyed it. Rate us. Please like the stream. Share it if you can. Rate us 5 stars on Apple, iTunes. Download the show. Listen. You can write your thoughts in the comments if you want us
Only if they're nice.
Yeah.
You'll be censored otherwise.
Otherwise, goodbye. Not really. But see you on Monday.
Enjoy the game.
Oh, wait. We didn't give our picks.
Oh, for tonight.
Oh, who cares? 31-10 Eagles.
37-15.
15?
Yeah.
What, someone gets a safety?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Cool. Who cares? Right? Bye.
Bye-bye. Enjoy the games.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know some.